airline turbulence survivor, Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice. We get on mandate. Get it on. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. Colonel Brian Sawser is in studio now. Good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, great to see you.
So, a little backstory. When we were out surveying the damage in the Palisades in Malibu, we went out on our own and we just sort of shotgunned it. And then at some point, we got in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they said you should talk to Colonel Sawser and go out with him, and he could fill in a lot of official particulars. So we did for the vlog, and people liked you a lot, possibly quite a bit more than me. And so we said, well, we should have Brian in and talk to him in the podcast because it makes sense. We have another vlog coming out today where you're featured in it. So we thought it'd be good material for this. So it's good to see you in the studio.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, and thank you for the opportunity.
So let's just set the table with you before we get into the official particulars. You joined up when?
Yeah, so I actually joined up out of high school. I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point. So, yeah, that was out of high school, 1995. So I've been wearing a uniform with U.S. Army over my heart for 30 years.
So you went directly to West Point?
That's correct.
Where was your high school?
It was in Salem, Oregon. Salem, Oregon, McKay High School.
And is this a family thing?
So my father served in Vietnam. He was wounded pretty severely in Vietnam, so he was medically discharged. He was actually a combat engineer officer, just like I am. And then my grandfather served in World War II as well. Not necessarily a family business. My father or my grandfather never necessarily pressured me into the military, but it's certainly something that I had an affinity for pretty young.
And so you go to West Point, and then once you graduate West Point, then what?
Yeah, so after you graduate West Point, you're commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, you get posted to various installations in the United States or in Germany. You go off to school first, a military school. So as an engineer officer, the home of the engineers is Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So I went there first. And then my first assignment was actually over in Germany. So I was over in kind of Upper Bavaria for those initial years. And this is now 2000, so you're 9 years or so after the fall of the Soviet Union, so you still have the remnants of the Cold War Army, and we're kind of going through a transition as an Army at that point. This is before the global war on terror.
Mm-hmm. And you decide on Army Corps of Engineers? Somebody pushes you toward Army Corps of Engineers? How do you make that decision?
Yeah, so I mean, it's changed a little bit on how they do what we call branching in the United States Army than when I went through. But essentially, I had a preference list, and I was able to put in preferences for the branches that I wanted to go into, and then the Army goes through a selection process in that. And at the time, your class rank at West Point is what mattered the most, and because the higher the rank, essentially, the much greater chance you get your preference. So I was fortunate enough to graduate high enough to get what I wanted. I wanted the Corps of Engineers early on, and so it worked out for me.
So as we saw when I went out and saw you in the field, is the Army Corps of Engineers is a Corps of Engineers, but most of the work is subbed out, right, to the private sector?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And so the vast majority of my career, I served in the operational Army. I think that's what most citizens think of the Army, kind of the business end. As an engineer officer, you have the opportunity to move over to the Corps of Engineers periodically. And the Corps of Engineers, like you just mentioned, is primarily civilians. It's over 35,000 civilians. And then we got a small cadre, essentially of uniform officers that command districts and divisions of those civilians. And they're professionals. There are all sorts of different professional trades. We have tradesmen as well that are in the Corps of Engineers. And then when we come to a disaster like this, like you just mentioned, we set up the operation, but we hire it out for an operation like this. So yeah, so it's private subs.
Is this the biggest fire cleanup you guys have ever done?
It is. This is the largest fire cleanup that the Corps of Engineers has ever been a part of. Recently, the Corps, we're really kind of finishing up over in Maui right now in Hawaii with that fire that took place a couple years ago. But in terms of a fire debris removal mission, this is the largest one the Corps has ever participated in.
How did this compare to something like Katrina?
Well, in amount of debris, there
Were
was.
you around for Katrina?
I was. I was in the military at the time. I was overseas when Katrina went down, so I was not in the Corps. But the Corps did obviously play a part in Katrina as well. And frankly, we had a lot of lessons learned that came out of Katrina in terms of volume. The debris volume was greater in Katrina than you're seeing here. But obviously, you have hurricane damage versus fire damages. So there's certainly some nuances there.
I took a flight home many years ago, and I was in first class with Spike Lee, and he told me that the Army Corps of Engineers blew up the levees on Katrina intentionally. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to ask someone if that happened or not. So now I can ask you, Brian. Did the Army Corps of Engineers blow up the levee so they could drown people in Katrina?
Well, the short answer is no. But certainly, New Orleans is a challenging problem set. One of my good friends, Colonel Colin Jones, he's actually the New Orleans commander over there right now. And we've made significant advancements with protecting and flood risk mitigation in and around New Orleans. But no, there was not an intentional detonation of a levee during Katrina.
And is the Army Corps of Engineers, what falls under their purview? Like, are they walking around or traveling around and looking for bridges or dams or levees that are not in A1 condition?
Yeah, you could think of it that way. So we have a series of what's called federal projects throughout the United States. Typically, that's a cost share program with the local authorities, so state or local authorities. And we do a lot of flood risk mitigation. So we are going to be more on the levees and the dams and the locks and the floodways and the spillways to control the movement of water, to include navigation as well, where we're going to do dredging in your harbors, in your rivers. So we're helping move commerce up and down all the inland water systems and the coastal harbors. And then performing the flood risk mitigation is some of the primary, what we call civil works tasks that we have out there across the nation. And we've been doing that historically, really, since our origin goes back to 1775, but the modern mission you can trace back to the time of Thomas Jefferson and Lewis and Clark and moving through and mapping the United States. And then waterways were our highways.
Who's monkeying around with the canals? I mean, such as the Suez Canal or other canals. Who is that? An Army Corps of Engineers thing?
Well, you would have thought I would have seeded you as a softball that question, but yeah, the Corps of Engineers built the Panama Canal, not the Suez Canal.
Yeah,
but
well, the Panama Canal, I think they tried to build it for a while, but it didn't really work, and then we showed up.
That's correct. Yeah, that's exactly how it went down.
But is the Corps maintaining the Panama Canal, or if something breaks on the Panama Canal?
Not currently. We don't have a mission with the Panama Canal at this time, and so as you may know, it's been handed over to the country of Panama. So the Corps does not play a part in maintaining the Panama Canal at this time.
So what percentage of folks that are working? Now, I went out there. You're doing Malibu Palisades. There's Army Corps engineers in Altadena as well.
Yep.
Are you guys? Last time we spoke, you were getting up to full capacity.
Yep.
Are you at full capacity?
We're about there. We're actually going to add some additional crews here in the next few days and weeks. We're very close to full capacity, like we talked about last time. We're in terms of, I think what people see out there right now, you see what we call debris crews, and that's an excavator with an operator. That's a skid steer with an operator. There's a water truck there. Famously, we have folks on the hoses. Yeah, and I figured you might want to get into that.
Well, off the air.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have a team, and then we have laborers on site as well. That's what people see during the physical removal of debris. But there's a lot going on behind the curtain before you get to the debris removal. We're doing a lot of surveying and collection of materials before we do the mass debris removal. And so that, we have arborists on site. We have to go through the asbestos process. We're going to bring a certified asbestos consultant out there. We're going to do testing, and then we're going to do an abatement if you have asbestos. So there's a lot that goes on before you get to the actual debris removal. But to your point, we are, if it's a bell curve in terms of our response, we're at the peak of the bell curve right now. And I think that's the months of April and May where we're going to be at full velocity, if you will.
So what is the prognosis? Are you going to be you're doing a parcel every day or so. It depends if it's on the side of the hill or out in the ocean with pilasters or pylons or caissons or whatever. But how many have you cleared versus what's still left?
That's a great question. So, in total, what we're seeing out in the Palisades fire, to your point, Malibu, the county areas in the Pacific Palisades, that's around 6,000 parcels that were burned that are considered eligible by FEMA. We work for FEMA through the authorities, and essentially they're deeming what is eligible or not, primarily destroyed structures on parcels. So if we're sitting at 6,000 right now, we've cleared 1,600, but we also know that there's about 1,200 opt-outs. As well. So that's
about 7,200.
Well, it's 6,000 total. 1,200 opt-outs.
Oh, okay.
Our homework assignment's going to be more like 48.
Right.
We think we're going to get probably a little bit more, so I think a nice round number is 5,000 to think of, and we've cleared today over 1,600, so that gets you over 30% cleared at this point.
Yeah, and a lot of that wasn't when you guys were ramped up fully.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
you're moving faster now.
We're moving faster. We're right now a 5-day average. We're doing about 50 parcels in a day. So, fairly easy math. You're achieving about 1% cleared per day. So if we're at 30% right now, we're projecting by the middle of May we'll be at 60%. And then to your point, not all parcels are created equal. You saw that in your videos, your great drone shots that you put on the vlog.
Yeah.
And so your earlier question, how long does it take to do a parcel? Well, we're doing 50 today, but there's parcels that take 1 day, a lot of them, and then there's parcels that can take up to 10 days. And so there's a spectrum there.
I'm guessing they're moving faster in Altadena because it's flat and it's sort of on a grid, and it's not hilly and it's not out in the ocean, and it's just easier. It's just flatter, smaller, grittier, kind of laid out for the most part. I don't know if you're keeping track of the guys over there in Altadena, but they must be moving at a slightly faster clip.
My comrades in arms over there, Colonel Eric Swenson and Colonel Sonny Abichal, they're out there working that problem set. And to your point, yes, Eaton's moving a little bit faster. It's comparable amount of crews that we do have. There are around 900 parcels more than us cleared over in Eaton right now, and they have a little bit more than we do in terms of their overall homework. But they're a little bit ahead of this. And to the points that you just articulated, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I'm going to savor you saying that's exactly right, because my whole life people are going, no, but hold on, but what about? Yes, that's exactly right. See, that's what smart people say. How many units or how many parcels are in Altadena? Not that you're an Altadena expert, but I really don't know the size of the Altadena fire in terms of structural damage versus Palisades and Malibu.
It's very similar, and I know that it sounds like I'm punting on this question a little bit, but the numbers are always changing. There's a little bit of noise in the data because as you go through the properties, some will be eligible, some will not be eligible.
But all in?
It's 6,900 or so.
So it's all about the same.
Yeah, it's very close.
So these two fires are separated by a pretty good distance. I mean, if somebody... I lived in the middle of Malibu, and my dad lived in Altadena. If my dad said, come on over Sunday and pay me a visit, I'd be like, ugh. And not for only personal problems, but because it was a long schlep. It's sort of one side of town to the other side of town represents Altadena and Altadena and Malibu. But it still ended up being about the same in scope and scale, huh?
Yeah, in terms of the amount of acreage that was burned, I think the Pasadena fire, from memory, is larger. A lot of that's up into the Santa Monica Mountains, though, did not have structures on it. And what we call the Eaton fire, which was right there at Altadena and Pasadena and Sierra Madre, I think in total acreage, Pasadena's a little bit bigger, but to your point, it is, unfortunately with this disaster, it ended up being in and around the same number of parcels at each fire that were destroyed.
Any interesting anecdotes? Did Mel Gibson bring you muffins? or any the Sheen boys come by and ask you if you want a little Gatorade or any of that kind of stuff?
No, I have four kids and I have 3 teenage daughters. So their knowledge of their father coming over to Los Angeles. Everything that I do over here is mildly interesting, but I did have the opportunity. Kim Kardashian came out with her crew and they were filming her show, and I got a picture with Kim Kardashian. So at that point, I was kind of cool with my girls. They're like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool what you're doing out there now. So up until that point, it was just standard dad's away doing some stuff.
Yeah, I get the same thing. My daughter cared about me for 10 minutes when she found out that Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas hit on me at a party in 2002 or so. Or something like that. Maybe it was 99. That she pepped up for that for about 10 seconds, right. And then was back to ho-hum. So you're out here. What? And I see these crews, and I mean, there's a lot of humanity out there driving these trucks, working these excavators, so on and so forth. I mean, it's an army, pardon the pun. How many of these people are coming in here from somewhere else, and what's local, and do you even know?
Well, I don't have a great distribution on where all the different subcontractors are coming from. I will tell you that the majority and a very high percentage are coming here from Southern California. And that's obviously due to a little bit of proximity. So most of them drive in for a day. And most of these guys are coming in 4 a.m. in the morning. And then they're working a standardized day, and they're working 7 days a week. They rotate the crews, so they give them a rest cycle. But I will tell you, having served in the Army in my entire career, and not having served with a lot of private contractors this close and this often, I mean, it's really, truly, and I mean this sincerely, it's been an absolute joy to work with these great Americans. I mean, you get some really hardworking individuals out there. And very dedicated to this mission. For a lot of them, you meet them all the time. This is personal for them. They may have known somebody that lost a house, or at the very least was displaced. And so the dedication out there that I've seen, and I mean this sincerely, has been incredibly impressive. We got some amazing operators out there too.
Yeah,
they're like artists on an excavator. It's amazing.
Well, I'll say this: I spent a lot of time with you and touring the sites with you. I've done it without. On my own, and going up to Mescal Canyon. I didn't hear one horn honk, which is a very rare thing because there's trucks queued up for 20 blocks along. There are guys backing trucks up. There's a lot of congestion. You know what I mean? And normally when there's that situation, somebody starts texting on their phone. They look down. Someone's waving them forward. Someone behind them gets impatient. They start leaning on the horn a little bit. I didn't hear any horn honking. I didn't hear anyone yelling out a window, let's move it, or whatever. There was no friction. It was just people sort of moving, lots of well-oiled gears just sort of rolling along, doing the job. Yeah,
to your point, I think that's largely true. This is still a human endeavor, and so there's going to be naturally some friction out there. We're working this, if you look at the percentages of the work out there, the Corps of Engineers through the private contractor partnership that we have, that's about 80% of your effort out there right now on debris clearance. But you got that 20% that is private contractors, and you can naturally have some friction there because it's a confined space. A lot of those streets up there in the Pacific Palisades pretty narrow.
Yes,
space is an issue. So there is some friction every once in a while. But we certainly try to work and partner with the privates, and you saw that obviously there on Pacific Coast Highway, where that encroachment zone or that construction zone that we built out in cooperation with Caltrans. We're bringing in the private contractors too, just trying to work this thing together. So trying to alleviate as much friction as we call it in the military as possible, but this is still a human endeavor. So there's going to be some added individuals sometimes.
Do you have any idea what the average guy is driving one of those dump trucks is getting paid?
They are doing well. They are doing well. If I gave you a number, I would probably be wrong. I'm pretty close on that number. When we came in, you'll see that most of the material that we're using are using the Super 10 dump trucks certified here in the state of California. And there's a finite amount of those, even here in the Los Angeles area. And so in order to contract out and reach that type of capacity that we needed to reach, it's a very competitive wage. I'll leave it at that.
$50 plus?
I think the plus. I would lean on the plus.
Yeah, and the guys working the heavy machinery are getting more than that, right?
Well, as you know, a heavy machine operator that's experienced is a premium. The skills trades and that you translate that to heavy equipment operators. Absolutely,
it is amazing. And I don't know if you've seen any of this stuff online, but they do have those competitions now where the guy tries to peel a boiled egg with with the claw of his excavator, or dunk a tea bag or something. Like it's getting really granular now, like what they can do. They're not just moving boulders, like they can really sift through it. And I saw it because it was in the vlog and I talked about it a little bit. Temescal Canyon is all what you guys have taken over, and then you have the dump trucks and the concrete pulverizers and the guys pulling all the rebar out of the concrete, which is obviously embedded in the center of the concrete, because that's how you lay out concrete and rebar, and pulling it all out and using you got this 20-ton machine that stands 60 feet tall, but you're using fingers like a surgeon on that thing, pulling out all the rebar. The average salary, blah, blah, blah. I got a lot on my screen. We're going to leave it alone.
Your team did some digging. All right.
Highly relate similar roles, engineer, operators. All right, I'm not. It's too much reading for me. Okay, so we got a core out here. We got the Altadena core. We got you, and I know you're shipping out real soon, right? Back to Germany.
Yeah, so my day job is I command the Great Memphis District at the upper end of the lower Mississippi, and you may have seen there's been some significant storms in the past couple of weeks, so we have what we call high water throughout that area on the Mississippi River and the tributaries, so we got a lot of flooding going on out there. Flood risk mitigation is one of the primary missions for the Memphis District, and I'll be heading back there. We call it change command, so I'll hand the colors to another colonel over there, and then I am going to move back to the operational army in Germany.
So why not leave you here for another several months and have you complete the job, since you're so familiar with the terrain now?
I would say, and obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased here, but the Corps of Engineers has a pretty deep bench, a bench of leadership. We have all the expertise that we've already talked about in the Corps of Engineers, but we also have a deep bench of leaders, and so we do rotate out. The Colonel Jeff Palazzini, a good friend of mine for 30 years, he was actually one of my roommates at West Point. He's come in to take over for me, and Jeff actually has more disaster response experience than I do. Mm-hmm. And so, him coming into this theater, he's coming in not cold. I would venture to say he's coming in warm, if not hot, in being able to execute this mission. And so we do this regularly in the military. And so, naturally for me, it would have been a joy to stay here and to see this one all the way through. But, I'm fortunate enough to have orders to move on a different assignment. And I don't think you're going to see you will not see any decrease in momentum with the team that we have coming in. In addition, Colonel Eric Swenson, who's overseeing both fires right now, he was out in Maui for six months. And so that coverage overlaps. Mm-hmm. And then we have another colonel just focused on Eaton, like I'm focused on Palisades. And so that layering of leadership and leveraging experienced leaders and rotating them through, that's something the Corps does with all disaster responses. And I would say, that's kind of ingrained in the U.S. Army. That's what we do in the U.S. Army all the time.
Oh, man. Soft toe. That's the name of the boot I'm holding from Brunt. Now, I'm only holding one because the other one's on my foot because I've been wearing them around. They're nice. They kind of remind me when I used to hit the construction sites. Guys, Sears used to make a boot that had a white sole, and it was really cool. And I used to have a pair way back in the day on the construction site, but man, they weren't as good as these. Founder of Brunt, Eric Gerard, grew up with a blue-collar background and started Brunt Workwear after his friends in the trades encouraged him to start a workwear brand that was really built for them. And that's why all the Brunt products are named after guys he grew up with. So like I said, I'm wearing the Oh Man soft toe right now. These Brunt boots were comfortable right out of the box. Most of them, stuff you got to break in. You don't have to break in the Brunts. They feel great. Most other boots require, you got to get the mink oil out. You got to run it around. You're going to get blisters otherwise. This stuff right out of the box. Totally wearable. Brunt isn't just about work boots. They offer a full range of high-performance gear built for tough jobs. I used to be in the trades, and I can tell you this Brunt stuff is top shelf. It's Brunt, right, Dawson?
Brunt didn't just make a durable work boot. They reinvented comfort for the hardest workers out there. For a limited time, our listeners get $10 off at Brunt by using code ADAM at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com and use code ADAM and you're all set. After your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them our show sent you.
Shopify. Yeah. Starting a new business, it can be intimidating. You can feel alone out there. You need support. You need help. That's where Shopify comes in. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style. You'll be able to get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. So, if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Am I right, Dawson?
Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Carolla, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Carolla to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/Carolla.
I hear that recruitment is up now with all the branches, with Pete Hegseth and Trump and the sort of little more I would call pro-American crowd, I guess. I don't know if you've experienced that. I don't know if you can hear people talking in the ranks, but do you have a take on that?
I do think you're right. I think in the numbers that we're seeing on recruitments, what I've seen from the news reports, just like you, I think there's been a bit of an uptick. The great thing about the U.S. Army is, we always fall under the civilian leadership, the duly elected civilian leadership above us, all elected leaders, regardless of party. I've served under 3 Democratic presidents, 2 Republican presidents. For us, we swear an allegiance to the Constitution, and I like to think that we're, part of, and we represent the United States, and so staying right down the middle and just executing policy. We don't make policy; we execute policy, and so. I haven't dug into the recruiting numbers, but I have seen the same news reports that you have.
So you come out, as we talked about, you get assigned here, you get a stipend, you set up here. You live in Germany, right?
Well, I'm going to Germany. I live in Memphis right now, and so my family's in Memphis.
Your family's in Memphis.
We're moving to Germany this summer.
So your family has to pick up and move.
They do, yeah. I mean, my poor wife, she's moved the house. I should have looked. I should have done the math before I came in here. We've probably moved 15 to 17 times in our military career, so she's pretty adept at it. You can't say that you ever enjoy it, but it's part of the process. But we've certainly enjoyed the journey because there's been just a whole set of experiences that we've had that the Army's provided for us, living abroad, living in the United States, living in different parts of the United States. And so overall, net gain, and we've enjoyed it.
No, I agree. I mean, I've always said kind of like about the military, which is, it may not pay a ton, but if you're on the deck of an aircraft carrier, I mean, how could you ever pay for that experience? You know what I mean? Like the things you get to do are kind of priceless, even if you're not getting rich off it. The places you get to see, the experiences you get to have.
Yeah, I think as a colonel that's been in the Army for quite a while now, several decades, I'm certainly a fan of the military. What I like about the military, the U.S. Army in particular, is opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I would argue for young people looking for purpose, motivation, direction, that the military is a great place to find that and then get opportunities like you just talked about. Before the fires occurred, I'm on the Mississippi River worried about flood risk mitigation and navigation on the river. And then before I know it, 48 hours, I'm in Los Angeles working on a fire response. For me, I enjoy that variety. I enjoy that kind of the new challenges. And so you get those catalysts that come along every once in a while that kind of pique your interest and pique your motivation. Again, opportunity, and the Army certainly provides that for you. If you stick around long enough, you're going to get a lot of opportunity.
So, when can you retire? When do you plan on retiring?
I mean, really, I could retire any time. Traditionally, I'm kind of grandfathered into the old retirement system, which was classically 20 years, and I've crossed the 20-year mark. I'm approaching 26 of active duty years. I could retire anytime I want, but I'll tell you that I love this profession. I love being in the Army. I love what it represents. So at this point in my life, I'm probably going to stay in the Army until the Army's done with me. It's a young person's game, if you will. And so I'm certainly closer to the end of my career versus the beginning of my career, but just trying to enjoy all the opportunities that are before me.
Yeah, and when you retire, do you take a significant pay cut?
I mean, not necessarily. You can certainly when you retire, you have a set of experiences that is desirable, that can be desirable in the private sector. For me as an engineer officer, I'm academically civil engineer, industrial engineer with a decent amount of experience, and so a lot of us, you can translate that into working for private industry in very similar fields, or you can go become a high school history teacher or whatever you want to do. But there's, for my peers that have transitioned out of the Army, they've always landed pretty well on their feet. And so I don't know necessarily what I'm going to do after the military, but I would say that it sets you up for any number of opportunities post-military.
Have you had any combat situations, fired the gun at the opposing enemy?
Yeah.
I mean, I see here you got a Bronze Star.
Oh my gosh, you guys dug into the internet.
We dug into that
stuff. So in our generation that came up during the global war of terror, I did have some time in Iraq, did have some time in Afghanistan, did have a lot of time in Eastern Europe. Certainly, some of those times were more difficult than other times. Being in those combat theaters. The way I look at it, though, I mean, of my peer group, there's guys that have served more often overseas in combat tours than I have and gone through greater hardships than I have. But I have had the opportunity to serve in combat, yes, in the United States Army.
See, for me, it seems like maybe sort of luck of the draw, but, your dad went to Vietnam. Vietnam seemed like a tough draw. Iraq, Iran, these Middle East theater seems tough. Then there's World War II. You may end up liberating Paris and drinking some red wine, with a lovely lady after you vanquished the Krauts. You could get assigned to Malibu essentially versus, as I said, Mogadishu, like when I was talking to you earlier. So there's a lot of just kind of cosmic wheel in the sky stuff, right? Yeah. The Middle East stuff, Iraq, Iran stuff, that just seems tough to me. It seems dusty and flat and dry and doesn't seem like being a, if you're in the Air Corps in 1942 and you're stationed in England, you could go out to a pub and have a pint, and enjoy it. Yeah. And then maybe you'd get shot down by a Stuka. But at least while you were there, the surroundings were kind of interesting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you never know what you're going to get in terms of where you deploy. I would say to your point, you go to World War II Army Air Corps, you might have had a drink of at the local pub, a pint, but being up in the sky over Northern Europe in that time would have been not a great survival rate. And I will tell you, I think, for me personally, what resonates for me is, I do a lot of reading and do a lot of historical accounts. And you ever start feeling sorry for yourself, read This Kind of War by T.R. Fehrenbach about the Korean War, and you'll suddenly realize that it's really not that bad what you got. And so no matter what situation that I think you can find yourself in, there's those that have served that have certainly gone through greater hardship than what you're in right now. And that, for me personally, that's always helps put it into perspective to a certain degree.
So your dad was injured in Vietnam.
Yes.
Was he in the Army?
He was. He was a combat engineer, lieutenant in the United States Army.
He was a combat engineer.
Yep.
So there are times when the combat engineers show up later and times when they show up earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, combat engineers historically embed with the infantry, and so you're at the tip of the spear, if you will. And so in the case of my father, that's exactly what he was. He was ingrained into an infantry task force, and they were forward. And he was. They came under enemy attack, and he essentially was. He was actually riding on the top of a tank at the time, and he took a piece of shrapnel in the chest, and it almost killed him. He was in hospitals for about 4 months afterwards.
So he didn't try to discourage you from following in that route?
No, he didn't. He never did. He really. I think a lot of folks like his generation, World War II generation, he really didn't talk about it a lot. But my dad was very patriotic. I was raised in a patriotic home, pretty proud of that. And he certainly communicated to me and my brother the nobility of service, but he didn't push us at all. And so I think when I started, communicating to my father that I was interested in going to the military, he did not put a stop to it, and really didn't talk about his combat experiences with me until I went to Iraq for my first tour. And
When you were in Iraq, where were you based?
So that was the first tour in Iraq was 05, 06. That was in Ramadi. So that's in the Al Anbar province. That's out there in the west. It was right next to Fallujah. There was a significant battle in Fallujah just prior to when I got there to Ramadi. And Ramadi had kind of seen a lot of the insurgents and the enemy fighters that we did have progressed from Fallujah, moved a little bit west into Ramadi. So it was a pretty trying time in a challenging 1-year tour. From that, I think shared hardship on the flip side of this, not to take this to a depressing tone, but on the flip side of it, I mean, you establish some bonds with those that you serve with that I think are deep and lasting, and then you can kind of have friendships that are a privilege to have as you move through the rest of your life. And so there's a positive there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have those kinds of environments to galvanize those kinds of relationships. It can be that way to a lesser degree with real competitive sports. Absolutely. When you're on a team. Absolutely. And you're sort of doing battle with the other team or whatever. You're not literally doing battle. But I mean, when guys, especially young guys, are in a situation where it's life or death, then you form that, right? Which is much different than an office environment or something.
Well, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from anybody's experience, but I think to your point, competitive sports, you could have that as well, no doubt. I think in general, shared hardships are good for the human spirit.
Yes.
And so that can come in many different forms. It doesn't need, you could find that in the Peace Corps. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you only find that in the military, but I think those type of bonds, I think they're healthy for people, and it's certainly I appreciate all the friendships that I've made in the military.
No, I agree. I think part of the problem with some of the younger folks is we're getting away from the environment where you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation or you have some superior sort of yelling at you and telling you what to do and really like testing yourself, that feeling of I can't go another inch and somebody's yelling at you, go, and you're yelling, I'm going to throw up, and they're going, get down and give me some push-ups. We eliminated all of that, but it wasn't a good idea. It's necessary. And then you apply it in every facet of your life, which I don't think people really understand. Like I never was in the military, but I did football back when they used to be able to kick your ass badly and deprive you of water and stuff like that. And they just tortured you. And, part of it was like, they go, well, why wouldn't they give you any water? Part of it was like they didn't care about hydration back then. But the other part was it was to break you down.
That's
like
right.
They were trying to break you.
That's right.
They didn't give you water because you wanted water. That didn't have anything to do with hydration.
That's right.
Or any of that. It was like, you want water. Yeah, no water for you. The trick question was always, after they'd run everyone ragged, they'd go, who's tired? And then people would be like, should we say we're tired? This is a bad question, because if you go, we're not tired, they'd go, good, we're going to run some more. And then if you go, we are tired, they'd go, well, you're in bad shape, so we need to run some more.
That's right.
I realized there was no good answer to who's tired.
Yeah.
But they ran you. They're real tough. And then at some point, you gotten out in the real world, and there was a little adversity, I should say, and you sucked it up. like you just rallied. You know, you were able to do it because of that experience of getting your ass kicked.
Fully agree.
And now we've decided not to kick anyone's ass, and now we got a bunch of soft folk out there.
I can't. I agree with you. I still remember, like you, high school football. I mean, I remember Coach Ron August, and he would just tell us, like, "You're going to keep running until I get tired," is what he would say, right? And he's sitting there with a whistle and a clipboard,
right?
And I always, I remember those, times like you, high school football, or whatever, and that kind of where it starts. And I think there's a lot of there's goodness there when you get some callus on your hands and callus on your feet. It helps.
I agree, but here's the disconnect, and I don't know if you run into this in your own life, family life, or maybe with young guys who show up that you in your, I don't know, we're calling your platoon or your, what do we call your?
As a lieutenant when you come out, platoon. Yeah, you're your platoon leader initially.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find myself saying to a lot of young people, and they go, "I'm not feeling it today, bro." I go, "Just get up. You're fine." And they go, "Yeah, but my stomach hurts." I go, "Your stomach's fine. Let's go." And they go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you being such a douche for?" And I'm going, "I'm not, but let's go." And they go, "What are you being so hard on the boy for? He says he's tired. He wants to sit. He says his stomach doesn't feel well. Says he may have a headache. He ate something earlier that disagreed with him." I go, "Get up. Let's go. Here we go. You can do this. Just let's do this." And they go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." And I'm like, I don't want to sound like a douche, but I do know what this is, and I know what you need. You need someone going, "Get up, you're fine, let's keep going here." Yet society does not like this form of parenting or governing. And I don't know, you must run into that a lot because you went through all it, and then when you see it in somebody else, they're good. They're just saying they're not good, and maybe they believe they're not good, but they're good.
Yeah, I'll say in the military, obviously, in the United States Army, we're gonna bring in soldiers from all across the country, all walks of life, all different backgrounds, and they're gonna have different experiences as they grow up. Certainly, early on in my career, you learn that the greatest thing that you can do for your soldiers and for your unit is to train them and train them hard. And it goes back to what you're saying right there, so that you can break down some of those mental blocks that they may have, and collectively make the greater unit stronger. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it. And so, I identify with that. I mean, you train hard, and you train as you fight is another moniker that we have in the United States Army. Train as you fight. So when you get to an actual fight that's not completely foreign to you, and you have a little bit of grit and callus built up, that's certainly part of it. Yes.
So we're going to be cleared out of Malibu, and I hear the power's back on, but I haven't been out there in a little bit.
Yeah.
But we're going to be cleared out by the summer. You think that things will be semi back to normal on PCH, although there's a lot of traffic issues.
Yeah.
Like we were talking, I think, off the air. There's a steakhouse named Mastro's right in the middle.
Yes.
There. Great steakhouse. And love going over there, having a steak and a martini once in a while. They're down.
Yeah.
But they're going to come back, but we know not when exactly. But I want Mastro's. So what do you think?
So what we're seeing on PCH right now, and working with the state, and the state is communicated to FEMA, who we're working on behalf of FEMA. It's in a great partnership with both organizations. We're surging on PCH right now because it is a vital artery. I mean, it really is your vital artery from Malibu to Los Angeles.
So you guys are working on, you focusing on PCH.
Yeah, much more so than when you were there last time when we walked around with the camera. We've effectively tripled, if not quadrupled, our crews on PCH right now. So when we were on Las Flores Beach last time, Las Flores Beach, as we're speaking here today, has essentially two properties that are not done. Those are both opt-outs. And so we're waiting. I don't know when the private contractors are coming to do those. But then we surged on Las Tunas, and then we're simultaneously really now working the whole stretch. We're trying to speed the whole thing up. And so the idea is by the time you get to May, that PCH, both seaside, adjacent properties on the mountainside, and even into the canyon communities are cleared as much as possible. Because there's certainly a need to try to open up PCH again for commercial reasons, for the residents. A lot of folks got to take grandma to the doctor, and now they got to go all the way around the Santa Monica Mountains. And there's no doubt there's additional hardships by having restricted access to PCH. Mm-hmm. So working with the greater team, all the local and state partners, we are surging on PCH, and we really believe when the sun rises on 1 June, it's going to be a very, very different place, and perhaps different configurations of PCH to allow more traffic.
So June 1st, you're saying, when the sun rises on.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're looking at the end of May to have a very, very different looking PCH, and we're doing that in concert with Southern Cal Edison. I think you were there when they were burying some of the transformers and preparing to have the underground lines.
They were. Are they? All right. So that's a good question. And by the way, you're not from here,
right?
And you only been here for 10 minutes. And I know people have been here for 20 years from Michigan or Baltimore, and I tell them, stop saying the PCH. And they go, it's the PCH. And I go, just say PCH.
Yeah.
Just say, that's what we do. Did somebody coach you up? Did somebody tell you just say PCH? Because every jack off who comes here from somewhere else, which is everyone in the comedy community and the acting community, they're all from somewhere else. They've all come here.
Sure.
And they've been here for 20 years, and they go, I'm going down to the PCH. I go, stop saying the PCH, and then we argue.
Yeah.
So you've been here for 10 minutes, and you say PCH.
Well, I think it's part of just embedding yourself in the community. We're out there 7 days a week.
So did somebody tell you, or you heard from the locals, or you just heard people saying PCH?
I don't know consciously how I got to PCH.
Okay, but listen, let me stop and compliment you. That's the fighting spirit. That's the spirit of the soldier.
There it is.
Your dad would be proud, because all the other idiots who have no discipline and are not in the Army and they're not any of this, whatever you have, they just argue and argue and argue. And I just go, it's just called PCH. Just say it. Just say it. And 10 minutes later, they go, we're going to meet up on the PCH. And I go, okay, you won't do it. But they won't do it because they can't do it, but they don't have your discipline.
Okay.
I'll
take it.
Heard it, and this is how you say it. And you've been here for 3 months?
3 months, yeah, a little bit over, yeah.
3 months, and you say PCH. I know people have been here 30 years, won't do it. Can't do it, been talked to it about 1,000 times. And I know it sounds like nothing. And I know it sounds like this is trivial, but what I'm saying is you hear something and you go, okay, that's how we do it. And then from that point on, you do it. The other people argue for the rest of their life to do it the wrong way. And that doesn't work in this man's army. So take that as a compliment.
I did not wake up this morning thinking that saying PCH was going to give me the greatest compliment, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, it sounds like nothing. It really sounds like nothing, but it means you're able to do in 3 months what most people I know in this city who are from somewhere else couldn't do in 25 years. And it's an attitudinal thing. And I know this sounds like minutia, but it's really not. It's you going, I want to learn, I want to adapt, and I want to blend in, versus I'm headstrong and I'm going to argue with whoever's telling me anything for the rest of my life, which is the opposite of playing football in high school and then going right to the academy. So there you go. All right, so you're going to ship out PCH, not the PCH, hopefully June 1st. Are they going to bury the lines on PCH or not? Now, they're burying the transformers, right, and it's really kind of cool if you see it. We didn't really highlight it in the vlog, but they have those shoring units for those trenches that they just drop in. Drop into the trench with the kickers and the walls and everything. It's like for a safety thing, so it doesn't cave in on them. But it's kind of interesting that they dig the hole, then they drop in the walls with the kickers on it, and then they safely can go in there and bury their transformers. But the poles along PCH, I've heard some talk about burying lines in other parts of the city and the state and that nature, but are they burying the lines on PCH?
So I guess I can't comment because I don't know for sure on Progressive what lines are going to get buried, when they're going to get buried. I do know that they're really focusing on the power right now, but of course you got telecommunication wires as well. I don't know the timelines on those. But they are, Edison is working on burying, I believe, the power lines. But it is a spatial issue as we work. We need, when we're doing those coastal properties right on the seaside, that's about a shoulder and getting into 2 lanes. And so now you've restricted traffic to the mountainside, and then you only have 2 lanes there. And that's really where they're doing a lot of the power work right now. And so we're working with them twice a week. We have communications with Edison, and hey, this is where we're at, this is where we're working, and then they move on to their work. Mm-hmm. Timelines, what's going in the ground, when is it going to be functional? I don't have those.
Do you know anything about putting those homes on a sewer system versus a septic system?
From my understanding, there's a bit of history there on with the city of Malibu primarily on sewer versus septic. As you know, at the time of the fire, everyone was on septic. Mm-hmm. I do know there's a lot of discussion about it. I don't want to get in front of my skis. I don't know how that's going to land.
It's a kind of a thing where everyone was on septic, and there's never a good time to go from septic to sewer because it's such a large-scale project that creates so much turmoil. You have to close lanes and dig things up, and it's very expensive. But if there was ever a time to transition from that to this, now would be the time because everything's down and the trucks are all there, and it's a sort of great reset going on in Malibu. So if you want to bury the power lines or you want to get them off of septic and onto the sewer or whatever, this would be your window because it's not really going to open again once they rebuild everything and get everything up and running. Once they take all those multi-million-dollar homes along PCH and rebuild all that, 10 years from now, nobody's going to want them to close off PCH for 3 years so they can get the sewer system laid. So now would be their window, but we'll see. How's the city been? How's the mayor been? How's the governor been? Have you heard from those people? Are they coming around? Are they checking on progress? Are they getting their boots on the ground?
Absolutely. I got to say for all the local community there. So you have the city of Malibu, obviously you have the state, you have the city of Los Angeles and the Pacific Palisades, and then you have those unincorporated areas. This is essentially LA County. Mm-hmm. And all the different political offices that we've dealt with have been incredibly supportive. And I deal with all those political leaders as well, and they're very knowledgeable and informed, and asking a lot of questions, and incredibly supportive of our efforts, I have to say. And so it's like when you come in and you're a guest or you're a foreigner to an area, the first thing you have to understand is the operational environment, and they're part of the operational environment, and it's a team sport here. It's a collective that has to figure this out. So the Corps comes in, works for FEMA. FEMA is working with the state, and then we work with those local authorities to gain as many efficiencies as possible. So there's a lot of weekend conversations. There's a lot of coordination meetings. We're laying out plans. But as an engineer, especially coming from the Army, we're not policy, all right? We execute. So we provide best in the Army. We provide best military advice. In this case, we're providing best engineering or crisis management advice. And then the political leaders enact the policy that allow us to move faster. So that's essentially what's going on.
Last time I saw you, we're up on Temescal, and we looked across the way, and they were working on some retaining walls and some footings and things like that. You guys had cleared the property, but you weren't going to clear any retaining walls or anything of retained earth for reasons we discussed on the vlog. And then you said the current crew was in there were a private crew who was demoing out the existing retaining wall, which had probably been compromised by the fire, and then reforming and repouring new footings and foundations, grade beams, what have you, retaining walls. And so they got a permit to do that. And so a lot of discussion has been about expediting permits. Right. Permits have traditionally been very difficult in this town, which is just wrapped in red tape. So have you seen any new construction, or at least the beginnings of new construction in your area?
I would say it's just starting now. You're starting to see in select locations, you're starting to see some groundwork being done, compaction, bringing in fill. Haven't seen a foundation poured yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see a foundation poured in the coming weeks. I don't know of those timelines, but to your point, like the crews doing some of the tiered vertical supports, like retaining walls on a tiered property, we have seen some of that. It's limited right now. I haven't seen a lot of it, but I would imagine each and every day we're going to see a little bit more out there. And for the folks that live in and around the Palisades, they're having hardships too, because we're already stressing the road systems with just the debris emission. And now you're starting to get a little bit of construction, but remediation, HVAC, painters, yard crews. There's a lot of commercial traffic coming in to do just work for standing homes. And so that's the challenge right now, is you got a lot of stress on the roads.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, as much as I'd like to move things along and expedite things, while you guys are clearing properties, you couldn't have cement trucks with a pumper going up to another property because they're going to pour the retaining wall today, and you guys are competing for road space with those guys. I mean, I think, as much as I'd like to move everything along, I think you guys are going to have to clear everything first before the next crew starts showing up for lumber drops and cement trucks and pumpers and things like that.
Yeah, certainly for us, and we realize that too, right? So, that's not the reason we're trying to move as fast as possible, but it's part of the calculus in that we know that there's a shot clock, if you will, right? And that shot clock is ticking down, and we got a little bit of time and space. This is an optimization problem. And when you have an optimization problem, how do you move faster? How do you get this done quicker, to scale and to quality, with quality, and done safely? Well, with any optimization problem, you got to eliminate unknowns and you got to reduce your constraints. And so we're living in a world right now where our constraints are, accessibility to roads is a big constraint. We have restricted access, so that's helpful, right? That's helpful to move faster. We didn't talk about it, but the declaration for whether you're opting in or opting out, that expired yesterday. So we'll kind of have a much greater knowledge of what our homework assignment is. So that just helps.
Opting in to the Army Corps of Engineers, taking care of your property, clearing your property, opting out, hiring privateers to do it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Last question: any Doge hits on that you felt in this man's army?
So out here for the emergency response, not at all. Emergency response, we haven't seen those effects. The Corps of Engineers, like a lot of governmental agency, there's some early retirement options that have been offered to some employees, and so we're seeing some employees start to potentially elect to take some of those early retirements. Certainly over here in California, we are enabled with all the capacity that we need to execute this mission.
All the resources you need.
All right.
What can I say, Brian? It was really nice meeting you, because I was worried that the privateers. I mean, listen, hold on a second. When I talk about the government and big government and shrinking government, I'm never talking about enlisted people, Army Corps of Engineers, or the folks out building the roads and doing that work. I'm talking more teachers' unions than I am Army Corps of Engineers for the naysayers out there. But it's still nice to realize there's patriotic people who live in this country that are enlisted or not, who care, who have pride, who have a work ethic, and it was all renewed when I met you, Brian.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to come here and tell the story of the United States Army, story of the Corps of Engineers, and what we're doing out here. A lot of times we're in the shadows and people don't know what we do, so this is a great opportunity for us. I appreciate this platform, and if I leave you with anything, go Army, beat Navy.
Yeah, and if you want to watch the vlog and see how easy Brian Sawser is on the eyes, he wasn't going to say anything, but the rest of the nation is talking. You can go to adamcarolla.com and check out the vlog. Thank you, Colonel.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it. Rough greens. That's right. I'll give it to Phil. Phil loves it. Yeah, it's good for him. I'll tell you about it. Sometimes in life, you want to get to the truth. You got to look at the numbers. Naturopathic doctor Dennis Black, who's the creator of rough greens? Well, he tells us that unfortunately 50% of all dogs over 10 years of age are going to die of cancer. And most of this is attributed to their diet. The dog does not have a healthy diet. But here's some good news. With thousands of testimonials and 5-star reviews every month, Rough Greens is now the #1 all-natural dog supplement in America. And you don't have to change your dog's food. You just sprinkle it on. You don't have to change their food to improve their diet with Rough Greens because you just sprinkle a scoop on top of the food they're currently eating, and it brings all the nutrients to the current food. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens. Am I right, Dawson?
Fetch a free Jumpstart trial bag for your dog today. Go to roughgreens.com. Just use promo code Adam. That's RUFF greens.com and use promo code Adam and just cover shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
O'Reilly Auto Parts. Pow. Love me some O'Reilly. You guys hear me talk about O'Reilly a lot, but I happen to use O'Reilly. Always did. Used to do it out of necessity because I didn't have much money and I'd wrench on my own cars, but now it's a hobby. I still go to O'Reilly. O'Reilly Auto Parts offers friendly, helpful service and the parts and the knowledge that you need to maintain and repair your car. Yep. There's one up on Foothill in La Crescenta. Still go to it. So whether you're a car aficionado or an auto novice, you'll find the employees at O'Reilly Auto Parts are knowledgeable, helpful, and best of all, they are friendly. So stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us online at O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/Adam.
And now, Alcoa presents Definitely Not a Jew on the Adam Carolla Show. Dateline, Sorrento, Florida. A 28-year-old deputy sheriff was subject to an internal affairs investigation after he caused $15,000 worth of damage to his police vehicle and another driver's vehicle. After initially claiming his brakes locked up, body cam footage revealed the deputy was driving while watching pornography. Definitely not a Jew.
Maury Povich. That was a long one, Dawson.
I want to tell you something. That story right there, that would have been the first segment on A Current Affair in 1989.
Oh yeah, man, Maury, you've been in front.
And we would have had the tape.
Maury's got a new podcast, On Par with Maury Povich, which is available now on YouTube and wherever you find finer podcasts. Good to see you, Maury.
Good to see you, Adam.
Man, I feel like you've been a part of my life, my entire adult life. I've seen you anchoring the news and on Current Affair and everything else. The podcast for you is a way to have a little more in-depth conversations, longer form conversations with people.
Yeah, and I also think that it's at the point of my life where, for the past 31 years, everybody has known me as the guy who determines who the father is of children and whether they pass lie detector tests and how to control teenagers. And so there's always been a different part of my life. I did the news, as you said, for a long time. And now I want to talk to people who I haven't talked to before.
Yeah, I was thinking about it this morning, not really apropos to this, but just in general, everybody sitting down for these long-form interviews and then leaving behind an archive of, real in-depth conversations, which historically, obviously, we don't have. But, I mean, it would have been awesome if Abe Lincoln would have gone on the Joe Rogan show and we'd have 3 hours of Abe Lincoln talking about trying mushrooms once or whatever they were getting into. But we would have this crazy archive of really interesting people not doing 7-minute shots on the Tonight Show that were
Sure.
sort of worked out and there for comic effect or to get an audience reaction, but real in-depth conversations. It's going to be great for future generations.
I agree with you. I think the whole aspect of podcasts has really changed the whole landscape of media. I mean, it's not people. I mean, first of all, I'm new to this. You're a big success at it, but I even find people, wow, I didn't know that about that guy, and I didn't know this about your wife, and I didn't know this, and you can't do that in 6 minutes.
No, I agree. Sorry, continue.
No, I was just saying it takes. First of all, the best feeling I get in an interview is when somebody says to me, no one has ever asked me about that. Or that's a part of my life nobody has ever gone into. And that to me, that verifies what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to sit in the studio and talk to guys like Norman Lear before he passed away for long, in-depth conversations. And now somewhere digitally it exists, Norman Lear for an hour telling me about how he grew up and his mom and his circumstances. To me, the best compliment, I think, I mean, no one's ever asked me that is a good one. For me, my favorite compliment is if someone comes in here and they sit down and you have this real in-depth, intimate conversation, and then at some point you go, all right, well, thank you very much for coming in, and we'll be back next Monday. And then they look up and they go, has that been an hour? And I go, yeah, it's been an hour and 5 minutes. And I go, oh my God, I didn't know it was that long at all. And I was like, good, that's good. That means we're having a real conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I get that feeling in golf when I play a course that's magnificent, and I get to around the 14th hole, and I'm going, why is this ending now? Why can't it just go on? Well, so, I mean, I get the same feeling.
So you start off at UPenn, right? Ivy League school.
Oh God!
And you
forever.
You major in journalism.
Yeah.
And
I was interrupted there. I guess you ought to know this, Adam. I went to an all-boys junior high and high school, and there were actual women there, and so. Just throwing that out, it took me 5 years and a summer to get through the University of Pennsylvania.
Well, because you love the ladies.
Yeah, and they said they also told me one year, why don't you just leave for a year and try to find yourself?
Because they were looking at your academic record?
Right, exactly. And it was putrid.
But you did go to an Ivy League school, which is should not be discounted, I would say. No. You did enough to get into an Ivy League school. You graduated an Ivy League school with journalism. Then where'd you go after school?
It was interesting. It was in 1962. And I had been an assistant to the television broadcaster of the Washington Senators baseball team, then in the American League. And so television was where I wanted to go. And when you looked around the world in 1962 in the media world, everybody on television had been in radio. Everybody who was working television had worked radio first, because television was still only 15, 16 years old. So
right,
I go to radio, and I want to be a reporter, and they say, well, you can't be a reporter unless you have experience. I said, yeah, but I got to get on the air in order to have experience. It was like a catch-22. I started out writing publicity for a 5,000-watt radio station. I hung around the newsroom just to the point where the news director said, you're in the way so much. Okay, you can be a reporter. And so that's what I did for 4 years. I was a reporter on a radio station, and then I got a job as the sportscaster on the 10 o'clock news on the now Fox station in Washington. And that led within 4 months to my doing a talk show like the Today Show, because there was nothing on at noon in Washington, D.C., and all the people on the White House and Capitol Hill and government agencies, they would all watch the show. So I got a reputation there. And then I started to anchor the weekend news. That's what it started.
I tell everyone, just sort of show up and be there. I mean, that's certainly how radio works, and a lot of TV and a lot of entertainment.
Just get in the door.
Yeah,
get in the door.
That's what I did with radio. That's every story I hear is just they were there, and eventually they became producer of the morning show, and at some point it just goes from there. But just sort of show up. There isn't really much pixie dust or secret sauce to it. It's kind of show up. 90% of most jobs, relationships, sort of everything you may want is sort of just show up and don't piss people off once you're there. Try to be useful and don't get asky or grabby.
Right. And back then, you have to understand, there was no such thing as interns. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you went into a station, you had to apply for a job. I mean, stations didn't have interns back then. They just had low-level paying jobs.
So you do that, but you've always known that's kind of what you wanted to do. What did your dad want you to do? I mean, you went to an all-boys school, then you went to an Ivy League school, so it stands to reason that your dad had some thoughts about what he wanted you to do.
Well, it's interesting. My father was the sports columnist and sports writer for the Washington Post for 75 years.
75 years?
75 years, from the ages of 17 to 92.
Oh, my God.
And so he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was there in the great golden years of sports writing with his like blood brother Red Smith and Jim Murray and all these great sports writers, and he was one of them. And I always wanted to go into journalism, and then I couldn't get a job because the Washington Post had a nepotism policy, and so as I said, I hung around this television announcer for the radio broadcast and television broadcast of the Washington Senators baseball team. My father was there. And so he says to me, and he's looking at me, he's seeing me grab coffee, go for this, go for that, carry camera equipment, do all these things. He says to me, so do you have a title? I said, yeah, I have a title. What's your title? Associate producer. He said, you're in the right business. You got a big shot-itis. You got a big shot attitude. You're in the right business, television.
Oh, hold on. They had a nepotism policy back in the 60s, early 70s?
40s, 50s, 60s, 70s at the Washington Post.
Right. So that would be sort of the opposite of how most people think, because they would have thought back then it was old man's club and this is one guy helping another guy.
There was only one family that did not abide by that rule, and that was the Graham family that owned the paper, and that went from Phil Graham to Catherine Graham to Donnie Graham. Other than that, there were no nepotisms in the place.
Wow, it seems like a really progressive policy to have in place that far back. You know?
Yeah, it was. I mean, they didn't, have your kids go somewhere else.
I mean, even if they're good, I mean, I know. But now we got Bronny James on the Lakers, so maybe they had something there. I don't know. So you, as I look at your bio down here, covering things as a reporter, the JFK assassination, MLK riots, Vietnam War protests, Watergate. You covered all that?
I tell you, from the time I got there, from the Martin Luther King speech at the memorial through 1974 with Watergate, they were the most tumultuous years in Washington, D.C. You could not replace those years with any other events. And they were just, they were spectacular. And I just happened to be there and was able to observe it all.
Well, let me ask a delicate question. So Watergate, it was a big deal, and I remember being a kid with Watergate, and it was Watergate. It's so much Watergate that now everything we just put the suffix gate behind it.
The next scandal, right?
Yeah, the next camp, someone left a hose running in a front yard, it'd be hose gate over who left the spigot on. But we do that, okay. And so we have these moments in America, and they're big and they're known, and we never let them go. But when the dust sort of settles on them and you step back, you go, I don't know, how consequential was that really? You know what I mean? Like, how many bodies, who died, what did it really change? Like, what really happened? And you could take something like January 6th and kind of do the same thing. We went nuts. We talked. We never stopped talking about this is the biggest threat to democracy since the Pearl Harbor attack and stuff like that. But when you just sort of step back, at least in my opinion, this is kind of the news going nuts with this stuff. Nothing changed. There's no body count. Really, it's done. We could have moved on. But then I look back and I go, well, was there a lot of stuff that was sort of that way? Now, you can't say JFK assassination was that way because the president got assassinated.
Right.
But was Watergate in a way like January 6th, where it was huge, we never stopped talking about it, but from a nuts and bolts standpoint, what really did it amount to?
What it amounts to these days is that it is a moment in history because of Watergate. Government changed in a lot of ways because of the actions of Richard Nixon. Okay. The Justice Department became nonpartisan, supposed to be nonpartisan. It's supposed to be independent from the White House because Nixon was using the Justice Department for his own worth. And so that is Watergate today is only a determination of things changed. And wow, 26, 50 years later, what's the story? Well, guess what? We might be in the throes of another Watergate situation in terms of how the government is being run and for what purpose and who's benefiting from it. Now, I'm not making any judgments. I'm just saying you only use Watergate as an historical mark to find out what happened because of Watergate and now what's happening 50 years later. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all it means.
Yeah, I get it. It's also just funny that we have to put gate behind everything.
Yeah,
So weird.
Well, can you imagine? Because at the time, it was the biggest thing.
I know
in terms of political history, since I don't know when. I guess maybe the war. The World War II. It was nobody had seen anything like that, and now I think there are tumultuous times. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. We're in the throes of that all over again in terms of what's this going to mean for the future. In other words, is what's happening now in government, is that going to last? Is it temporary? Who knows?
I'm wondering, I sort of have a head on it that we're always going to be in tumultuous times now because of so many news outlets and so many people trying to grab eyeballs that there's just always going to be something or more than one thing going on at once because that's sort of the new world order. Like we need eyeballs. I think we put Gate, the recent they had the text thread that put on the reporter by mistake, and I think they put the word gate behind that one.
Signalgate.
Signalgate. Yeah, Signalgate, which is like, all right, it seems like a mistake to me, and somebody probably should be punished, but I don't know, we need to put the word. It didn't rise to the level of gate.
Right. Exactly. All they want to do is be able to put everything in a box. And so if you use gate, okay, this is the latest gate.
So you've been married to the beautiful Connie Chung for 40 years, 41 years?
Yeah.
I'm looking down here.
Over 40, yeah.
Yeah, I had a crush on her probably before you did because I lived in Los Angeles and she was on the
She was a big star in Los Angeles.
She was, wasn't she?
She sure was.
I mean, I guess back when you could be a big star doing local news. I mean, I guess if it was in Los Angeles, for sure, right?
Yeah, she was a really indefatigable reporter in Washington for the Washington Bureau during Watergate in those years, then went to Los Angeles to anchor the CBS owned and operated station there. And she anchored like 3 newscasts a day. And then she finally went back east, first at NBC and then back at CBS. And of course, the rest is history in terms of her and getting involved with Dan Rather on the anchor desk.
She seems delightful. I don't know her. I've never met her. She seems like she would be
got
very
the greatest sense of humor. Greatest sense of humor ever.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you where it really came out because you couldn't do it anchoring the news or reporting the news. It came out because David Letterman fell in love with her.
Oh,
and she was on the late night show with David Letterman for years. And every time a guest couldn't make it, he would call upstairs and say, Connie, come on down and fill in. And between her and Terry Garr, I mean, that was it with Letterman, between the two of them.
Yeah. I've known from some experience that if you are local and you deliver, you will be on a short list of people they call when people drop out. I used to do that with Politically Incorrect because I was in town. They always knew I would deliver, and it was on my way to go do Loveline, the radio show I was doing. And so I would get calls day of all the time.
Mar would call you and do Politically Incorrect?
His producer would call me and do that. But it'd be that way with The Tonight Show. There was a couple of in-town shows.
Sure.
Because let's face it, if you're going to book a couple of guests 5 nights a week, you got to have a Rolodex with a couple of ringers in there that you know are local and can come out on short notice. But she was in the building, right?
Yes, but Adam, you got to understand this. If they keep calling you, that means you score. You scored with them. They can look at the ratings every night. They're not going down if you're on. So therefore you scored. And it was the same thing with Connie. I mean, Letterman wouldn't have her on unless she was so funny and the audience loved her and everything like that. And the crew loved her. And that's why he repeatedly asked for her.
Well, for me, I think it was more desperation. But okay, I'll take that compliment. But she was literally in the same building as Dave. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
So she could just go downstairs and be funny.
Sure.
Although
and not only that, I'll tell you that his executive producer, I don't know if you ever knew a guy named Robert Morton?
Morty. Yeah.
So believe it or not, when I was working in Washington doing this local talk show, Robert was my intern.
Really?
Yes.
I got to tell.
Before he went to the big time.
I got to tell everybody, be nice to the interns, because
exactly.
I got an intern who was an intern on The Man Show, and now he runs reality TV for ABC, and I got to go in there and put my hat in my hand and pitch him something every couple of years. And he's got a big office, and never bought anything I've pitched him. But you got to be nice to these guys on the way up, because you never know where these people are going to end up. And a lot of them, surprisingly, end up in really powerful positions.
Oh, I mean, sure. I mean, look, Bob Iger started out as a production assistant in the ABC sports department. Okay?
Right. And when you're a douche to young Bob Iger, he never forgets it. You never forget when you're 22 who was a douchebag to you, and conversely, who was nice to you when they didn't have to be nice to you, and they will carry that with them for the rest of their career.
Sure.
They never say it out loud. They just know how they were treated. It's an interesting human quality. So you recently made the news because you were talking about having sexy Sundays with Connie. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you about that.
I'll tell you, I've never had my Sundays draw so much attention. I mean, I'm doing the podcast, and the producer says, okay, I'm going to have this little bowl, and in the bowl are going to be questions, random questions. And so Connie pulls this question out, and it says, when do I feel sexiest? Well, it's Sundays with Connie. It's not like recent. I mean, we've had Sundays with Connie for a long time. And so, and then Connie says, oh, never on Sunday. I said, not in my house. and then Connie went like this.
Shut your mouth.
Just went viral.
Well, it does kind of beg the question, which is, should a busy couple who's together for a long period of time, should you schedule intimacy or just have it be spontaneous? I think you could make an argument for either one. But
well, okay, I'll end it right now. I didn't say only Sunday.
Okay. What's your regimen? You're 86 years of age.
Right.
You're in tremendous shape. Your faculties are all there. Evidently, you like to golf and have a lot of sex. But other than that, what is the regimen? I mean, are you on? Are you on this? Pill, and I don't mean pill, but
No.
what I mean is like, what is your health regimen? What do you do when you wake up in the morning?
It is so ridiculous. I have no elixir to life. I don't. I work out an hour twice a week. Okay.
Testosterone replacement?
No, none of that. No, I don't. I have. Okay, let's see. My blood pressure is a little high, so I take a little blood pressure medicine. Let's see. What else do I do? I take a vitamin D. I take a vitamin B. I take like 4 pills every day. None of them particularly egregious. They're not maximum pills. And so I just, maybe because my father was 92 when he died, and he died the day after he wrote his last column in 1998. And he died peacefully in the back of my brother's car, because the doctors would say, because they didn't want to give him any kind of heart surgery at that age back then. And so therefore I asked what would happen. He said, well, in about 6 months, there'll be a quiet incident and he'll die. And that's what he did after dinner in my brother's car. And he had all of his faculties. He was still playing a little golf. And so that's it. I mean, I walk in the wintertime. I'm in Florida, and I walk the beach every morning with my dog. And,
So genetics. I mean,
I guess I don't know.
No, it
might
is.
be genetics.
It is. Well, look, here's the thing. Whether it's male pattern baldness or a double chin or longevity or big schnoz or eyesight or hair, unwanted hair on your back, it's all genetics. For women, it's, breast size, hip size. It's all genetics. And we have a multi-billion-dollar industry trying to convince everyone we can beat the genetics. We can have hair where hair didn't exist, and you can have breasts where breasts didn't exist, and we can remove hair where you don't want the hair, and we can spray you and make you look tanner than you normally would be. Like we'll put caps and veneers on your teeth. Like it's a big. Everything is a big genetic sales point, but the people that look good, live long, have a full head of hair, have a ample bosom. It's just all genetics. It's all genetics. And we don't want to say it's all genetics, because there's pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, and it's a battle, but it's really genetics.
There's never been anything done on my face. The only thing I've ever done over the years was, when my hair went white, I went some salt and pepper in it. And so I color my hair a little bit. And, that's the only thing I've ever done. Many, many years ago, I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, God, boy, do I have a big nose. So I said to my mother, I said, Mom, a lot of people are getting nose jobs. Maybe I should get a nose job. She says, don't you dare. Your nose gives you character. So that's the way it was.
So you say your dad died after his last column.
Yeah. They printed his obituary and his column at the Washington Post on the front page next to each other.
Really?
Yeah.
And it was understood that was his last column, not.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, I'll have a last podcast, but it may not be my last podcast. I may just get hit by a truck after I talk to you, and it will be my last podcast. But that was his last column. He signed off.
It was his last column, and it was in 1998. It was the middle of the baseball season. And the great baseball writer for the Washington Post, Tom Boswell, was talking about Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, and they were hitting all these home runs. And McGwire was hitting all these games in which he was hitting 3 home runs in the game. And Boswell did something that my father just reacted to. He said, "This is better than Babe Ruth." My father covered Babe Ruth.
Wow.
So that night, he wrote a column basically to Boswell, his protege, saying, "Tom, just wait a minute here. Don't you dare, because of one season and all of a sudden this guy is better than Babe Ruth." And he gives all the reasons why. And then he says, because he didn't know about steroids then, he says, "I'm just suspicious of this guy hitting all these home runs, drinking nutrition shakes in the clubhouse."
Oh, right. Yeah. All right. We only have about 2 minutes left here, Maury, but I'll ask you quickly. I read that you believe in the nuclear family and families staying intact. And I'm a big fan of that. Dads in the homes, so on and so forth. I believe it'll cure every ill that society has currently. But go ahead and give us your opinion on it.
Well, here, everybody, a lot of media critics over the years used to tell me that I was exploiting the theme of paternity tests on the show. And I was exploiting this theme. And I said, let me tell you something. All I am trying to do is to find out if this guy is the father of this child. That child has a better chance with 2 parents in his or her life than one. It's very basic. It's very simple. The statistics say that, okay? And I know that a substantial number of these guys got into the lives of those kids because I brought them back. The show was on so long, I brought them back 20 years later to find out how it worked out. And sure, there were guys who just walked away, but there were many who didn't. And that was it.
I agree, and I wish we could make it more of a national conversation. Maury Povich, On Par with Maury Povich, is on YouTube and all the podcast platforms as well. Maury, I hope to have you back soon.
Anytime, Adam. It's nice to be with you, and congratulations on your success.
And you too, my friend. All right. We'll take a little break. We'll be back with Steve Williams right after this. Homes.com. Some might say Homes.com is the best home shopping site. And it may be because Homes.com's super comprehensive and transparent agent directory, or maybe it's that Homes.com is the only site that always directly connects you with the listing agent who knows the home the best. Perhaps it's because Homes.com has the most in-depth neighborhood content of any home shopping site that's extensively researched to highlight the personality of each neighborhood. Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in-depth info they need to find the right home. So if you're looking for a home, or you just like looking around online, seeing what's going on. Homes.com. Homes.com. We've done your homework. 1-800-Flowers. Mother's Day is coming up quick, and there's no better way to celebrate than getting your mom a fresh bouquet of roses from 1-800-Flowers. Oh, man. It's got to be fresh, and that's where 1-800-Flowers comes in. They show up fresh. They'll show up with a little packet, put the stuff in the water, stays nice and fresh, lasts longer. This year, I'm teaming up with 1-800-Flowers.com to make Mother's Day even sweeter. And right now, when you order a dozen roses, they're going to double it. That's right. 2 dozen absolutely free. They're going to add 1 more dozen for free. How about that? The roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak, cared for every step of the way, and shipped fresh to ensure high quality, long-lasting beauty. I always use these guys. They're the best. Bouquets are selling fast, so lock it in today because Mother's Day is right around the corner. It is 1-800-Flowers, right, Dawson?
To claim your Double Your Roses offer, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Adam. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Adam. It's time to check Adam's voicemail.
This is Mike from Huntsville. Adam, I have a philosophical question. Has Spirit Airlines brought down air travel, or has it upgraded bus travel? Get it on.
You can leave us a message at 888-634-1744.
Well, is the wallet half full or is the wallet half empty? It's a question. Steve Williams has joined us. Has a book. The book is called Together We Roared, alongside Tiger for his epic 12-year, 13 major run. It's available now as we speak in the Caddy Hall of Fame, and does a little race car driving as well. Good to see you, Steve.
Yeah, how you doing there, Adam?
I'm doing good. I started thinking about being in the Caddy Hall of Fame, and I think it's sort of akin to me being in the podcast Hall of Fame. It's good, but I think I'd rather be in the broadcast Hall of Fame. But
yeah, I mean, I guess in your line of work, broadcasting's the top of the tree, so you're working your way up there, Adam.
I guess I am. Alongside Tiger Woods for his epic run. I've never interviewed Tiger Woods. I've heard all kinds of different stories about him being super competitive and stuff like that, but I really don't. I don't think I know. I can't get a good bead on him. How would you describe Tiger Woods?
Well, yeah, I mean, you just said competitive. I don't think in the time that I spent caddying on the tour for 40 plus years, there was someone that was more competitive than him, whether it be actually playing golf or playing ping pong or just having a putting competition with another pro. Unbelievably competitive person, but also a work ethic and a desire to compete at the highest level, and a desire to be the best, unlike no other person that I've seen play the golf tour. Jack Nicklaus was obviously in the same kettle of fish as Tiger, but probably not quite the same desire as he had. So yeah, just look, I mean, he's once in a lifetime player, a generational player with all the skill set and the desire to go with it.
So when you're caddying, because I grew up poor in North Hollywood and nobody played golf, and I didn't even know anybody who owned a golf club. We'd go to the driving range every once in a while, but I did actually get thrown off a driving range for hooking too many tee shots into the tennis courts, which were to the side. But so I didn't have any skill. My dad never golfed. It was too expensive. Nobody knew anybody who played golf where I was from, but I never really knew what I thought a caddy just sort of carried the clubs, but I didn't really know how much strategy was involved with caddying and what kind of conversations were being had. Can you tune us into that?
Obviously, you can caddy at your local country club or your local golf course, and then you can, move on to being a professional caddy. I mean, a lot of caddies like myself started at a local golf course and move on. But, everybody that caddies obviously gives the information to the player. That's the easy part of the job. Tell the player how far it is, where the pin's located, where the wind is. Caddies are incredibly familiar with the course. They spend a lot of time walking the course, measuring the course, detailing the course, have all the information on the course. So that's the ease, or that's the nuts and bolts of the job. But when you're playing on the PGA Tour or any professional tour, there's a lot of pressure involved, and there's a lot at stake in that. And these guys need someone along them to guide them along when they're playing poorly, when they're getting too hyped up, when they're getting ahead of themselves. To remind them of the situation, stay in the present, all sorts of things. It's like an on-course psychologist, I guess. A caddy also has to have a good understanding of the technique. The player doesn't have a coach with them all the time, and the caddy needs to have a bit of an idea of the fundamentals to look at every day if the player is playing poorly. So it's a job with a caddy where it's a role where he wears many hats. He's got to be there as a sounding block sometimes and just someone the player can confide in. But yeah, he's got to be able to keep the player grounded, keep the guy level. And when you get into some big situations and trying to win big tournaments and that, the players can get very nervous. They can get ahead of themselves and that. So yeah, a caddy is an important tool or important part of the team, along with the coach and the other players and the player.
How open is a guy like Tiger Woods to you offering some constructive criticism or having an alternative viewpoint that he may want to use this club and you might want him to use that club, or you're noticing something in his swing or something you'd like to correct him on?
Yeah, well, look, when you spend a lot of time with one player and you get to know them very well and they get to know you very well, you're not going to say something without any constructive thought. So if you actually have 100% in your mind that the player's got the wrong club, you've got to actually find the right way to be able to persuade the player to use the club that you've got to be able to present that argument very quickly and very clearly and concisely and confidently. So, but like what makes a good player and team caddy player team is that they agree most of the time. They're on the same path. The player and the caddy understands how the player plays, what sort of shots he's going to hit, and what he tends to do under pressure. What are his favourite shots to lean towards when he needs to. So you get a good understanding. So you don't actually disagree that often, to be fair.
What is I'm taking a nerdy deep golf dive here, but you tee off with your driver, if it's a regular, I don't know, par 5, and you'd putt with your putter. Where does the sort of, I don't want to say argument, but discussion about which club to use, where is that? Is that at 120 yards out? Like where's that discussion?
Yeah, that discussion generally comes, what would be the second shot. So if it's a par 4, it'd be the second shot. Could be a tee shot and a par 3 or a second shot to a par 5. Generally, when you get to a tee, you've played a practice round so you come to a tee shot and that tee shot is either going to be a driver or it might be a layup with an iron or it could be a hybrid club off the tee. So, you'll have a game plan. So you won't have too many not arguments, but you won't have any change of clubs on the tee generally, unless the weather's completely different. But you'll have a bit of discussion over. You'll get to a hole, and the guy might think it's this club, and you might think it's another club for reasons that the player might not be seeing the wind the same as you're seeing it, or the ball might be going a long way some days. Players also, when they get into contention, they start playing and they get the adrenaline flow and they start hitting the ball further and further. And sometimes they don't see that they got the adrenaline going. They start walking quick and things that, they're talking quick, the adrenaline, the juices are going. So, yeah.
Did you do much socializing off the links with Tiger?
I spent quite a bit of time on the weeks leading up to the major championships practicing with him. And during tournaments, we might go out to dinner. But no, I learned way back when I was caddying for Greg Norman, one of my first caddy assignments back in the 80s, that you've got to keep it a very business-like workman. You do become good friends when you caddy for somebody because you can't not become friends. You spend so much time with them. But no, you've got to keep that player-caddy relationship and keep it fresh. So, I chose to keep not keep my distance, but not socialise too much. Like I said, the weeks before major championships, I'd spend a lot of time with Tiger as he was practicing, getting ready for those events.
How much of caddy stuff is being superstitious? And I don't really mean superstitious, but like in my business, they'll have a job. It's called audience warm-up. And it's a comedian who comes out there and gets the audience warmed up before you tape the sitcom or the late night show. And producers get very attached to certain guys and go, no, we got to have this guy. But it's almost like he's good luck. He's good luck. We'll have this guy do the warm-up, and then the show will get picked up because we'll have a great audience. And as I hear him talk, I realize some of it is the guy's skill, and then the other part is just, this is my guy. I win with this guy. And golfers, I guess, can be kind of superstitious. Do they get superstitious with their caddies? Yeah,
look, I mean, yeah, absolutely they do. But in the golf business and that, caddies, if you spend 5 years caddying continuously for one player, we consider that to be quite a lengthy time because, golfers never continue the same form in, week out, year in, year out. So when a player starts playing poorly, they always look for change. And so that's when that superstition breaks. And the first thing they'll do is usually change their caddy or their coach and look for something else. So I think the superstition thing is more like, okay, today I started off the tournament really, really well. I practiced over on that side of the range. So tomorrow I'm going to go to that side of the range and practice. Those kind of superstitions, not so much the caddy or the people around them. I think it's just more little things like that. Okay, I put my I had a great round today. I put my right shoe on first. I'm going to put my right shoe on again first today because I did that yesterday. Those kind of little things.
Did Tiger read the book? Did he give any feedback? Did something piss him off? Is he good with the book?
Yeah, look, I don't have any communication with Tiger now. So we sent Tiger a copy of the book. Evan and I, who wrote the book, we wanted to send Tiger a book, which we did, and we're sure he'd be really happy about it. There's no dirty stuff in there. It gives the reader a real background into, arguably one of the greatest sportsmen and the greatest golfer that's ever played the game in the midst of one of the greatest sporting streaks. And it gives the reader a real background and sort of a backstage pass, if you like, to how it all went on, some of the great moments, how they occurred, and some of the thought process. And it's a real good journey. Evan and I are real pleased the way it turned out, and we both thought, at the end of it, what would Tiger think if he read it? And we think he'd really enjoy it.
I know you do some Super Saloon Racing. That's kind of interesting. I was just looking up saloon cars the other day, literally like 4 days ago, because there's a saloon car category for the Pebble Beach race that I do every year coming up, and I was trying to figure out if one of my cars would qualify in a vintage race to be a saloon car. And then I also knew that the Goodwood Festival has a saloon car category, which is kind of crazy. I recommend everyone listening to me go look up saloon car race at Goodwood. It's crazy. But then your saloon car is different than that saloon car, and it probably means something different in New Zealand, correct?
In America, you call them late models. We call them saloons, super saloons. So it's a dirt track car, but in America, you call them late models.
Yeah.
So it's complete. I've been to Woodwood. I know exactly what you're talking about. And completely different. They're dirt track cars. And in America, you call them late models.
So you do dirt. You won championships in dirt oval.
Correct. Yes.
Which is kind of a fun class. We do it out here. We have midgets run those. I don't even know if they're allowed to call them midgets anymore as I think about it. And we have full-size cars, and a lot of NASCAR guys go from the dirt oval and they graduate up into the super speedways and stuff like that because it teaches you a lot of car control because you're on the dirt and the car's always sideways. Basically, you're drifting around the oval. How did that come in? Where'd that come in for you? Because golf and that, I think there's you couldn't get too far. Sports there couldn't be a bigger margin between golf and dirt track racing.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've followed dirt track racing ever since I was a kid. And, I got into it, I think when I was 17 or 18 years old. I've been into it a long time. And it was a real good relief for me because it's such, like you said, you couldn't get to more different ends of the spectrum, dirt track racing and golf and the people involved in that. I mean, it's just completely two different lots of people and two different completely scenes. And I found it, particularly in the years when I was caddying with Tiger, and there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. And I'd come back to New Zealand and every weekend I'd do the racing thing, and it just to get away. Nobody at the racing sort of even knew anything about the golf side of things. They never asked me anything about it. They didn't know anything about it really. I mean, they know who Tiger Woods was, but it was a really good. Everybody's got to have an out for something, and that was my out. But it's a sport that even today I absolutely love the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting that I can't even imagine. It's kind of a funny thing, but guys who do a lot of racing and are gearheads aren't really into sports. which society kind of thinks, oh, these are blue collar guys. They like to wrench on their cars, and they like their cars and their big V8s, and then they crack beers and watch sports on the weekend with the NFL football. No, different guys. They're not into sports.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, as you said, there are two different ends of the spectrum, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the two different sceneries, the completely different atmospheres, and I mean, dirt track racing is a real blue collar sport, no two ways about it. But it was just something that I grew up really enjoying. We had a speedway close to where I used to live as a child and used to attend all the time, and I just ended up getting into it.
Do you do other forms of racing, or just the Super Saloon?
We have two. We have two different classes. One has a 360 cubic inch in it, and then one has an open limiter. And I have one car in each class, and each weekend I choose between the two cars, which is a better event, or maybe which is the event closer to home. But same kind of car, just a different engine in them. So
I don't get really what the advantage is to having bigger displacement and more horsepower if the rear wheels are just spinning the whole time.
Yeah, well, that's the key. I mean, you've got to be that's what you've got to try and do, is you've got to set the car up so that it doesn't spin all the time. And of course, when the track gets slick in a dirt track race, when the track gets very, very slick, the lap times between a car with 360 cubic inches and a car that's got 410 cubic inches, the lap times can be very, very minimally different. But when the track gets really drivey, with a lot of drive and a lot of grip in it, that's when you'll see a big difference in the lap times, where the rear wheels are getting hooked up onto the surface.
So how do you get to be a professional caddy? I mean, you hit Greg Norman, who's a big name, the Shark, in 82. You were, 19 or something like that, like young. He was, I don't know when the pinnacle of Norman's career was, but it was always a big name as far as I could remember in golf. How do you get hooked up at such a young age with someone like that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I just started caddying from basically as a child. My father introduced me to Peter Thompson, a very legendary Australian professional, and I caddied for him in the New Zealand Open. It was 1976. I was 13 years of age, and I was hooked on it right from then, absolutely hooked on it. That was my path. That was what I wanted to do. And I found out how you do it, went about it, and started caddying. And it wasn't long that I was caddying, and I was paired with Greg Norman. I was caddying for another player, and I was paired in the same group with Greg Norman. It was actually the Australian Open. It was like 1981. It was the last tournament of the year, and he called me over the summer break and said, "I'm playing a few tournaments in Australia at the start of the year. Would you like to come and caddy for me?" And he observed my work that day and really liked it, so it's kind of a lucky break to get to start off with. But I just, like I said, I started at my home golf course caddying. There's no real path to becoming a caddy. A lot of guys are players that haven't made it on the tour, or they're guys that are very good and wanting to make it on the tour, and they go and caddy to see what it's all about. A lot of the guys are friends of players, or there are a lot of caddies like myself that come from the club background and just happen to know a player, or that it may have had a tournament at their course, or what it might be. They might have a college mate that played on the tour. There's many different ways to get onto the tour, but there's no there's no set way, if you like. There's no.
New Zealand, Australian, is there a rivalry, or do they care? Like, it's kind of interesting that, it's like the Army-Navy game is a big rivalry out here. But I'm like, I don't know, why such a rivalry? You're both in the service, and you're basically on the same side. If a war breaks out, you guys will be best friends. But it's a rivalry. It's Army-Navy. We do that all. USC and UCLA. It's a crosstown rivalry. It's because their proximity. But then I think, what about Australia and New Zealand? Like, as an ugly American, we're sort of like, we don't even know the difference. We don't care. We don't even think about it. If you're from New Zealand, everyone will go, yeah, guy's Australian, and then you'll have to correct them. That's how bad we are. But how is it there?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very big sporting rivalry between Australia and New Zealand. We're only a small country of 5 million. Australia's 15 million, 3 times the size of New Zealand, and we compete very, very good with Australia in sport. Rugby and cricket are our 2 main sports. And then in the women's sport, it's netball, and we compete very competitively. If not, particularly in rugby, which is our national sport, it's a great rivalry. So, and also, when your typical American hears the lingo or the language of someone in Australia and New Zealand, 9 times out of 10 that they'll think you're from Australia. And Kiwis don't like that. They like their own identity. They say, no, we're from New Zealand, not Australia. So, it's like it's like the different American accents. A New Zealander can't tell the difference between someone from Alabama or someone from Georgia, but, we can tell an Australian and a New Zealand accent's very different to us.
Yeah, people get, it's funny, there's some people here, women named Catherine, and some of them do it with a K, and some of them do it with a C. But if you say Catherine with a K to a Catherine who spells it with a C, they go, "Oh, come on!" And I'm like, I'm not trying to offend you. I don't care, and I don't know. I feel the same way with Australia and New Zealand. But I'm glad you guys have a rivalry. I like that, and I knew you would, and you have to, but I don't know why.
Yeah, no, it's a great rivalry. Well, I mean, it's just I guess many years ago, Australia's had a bit of a habit of claiming some of our athletes and saying, "Oh, these people are from New Zealand," when they're actually not. Mm-hmm. But certainly any time there's any sporting games between the 2 countries, it's a very, very good. But it's a very healthy rivalry. It's a very good one, and you've got to have rivalries in sport, as you know.
Yeah, I may be guilty of this because I was talking the other day on the show about a guy I worked with named Frazier, and then we worked construction, and I tried some of his Vegemite, and I hated it. And then I said he was Australian, but as I think about it, I think he was from New Zealand. But then I think of Vegemite as Australian, but is Vegemite New Zealand as well?
No, ours is Marmite, theirs is Vegemite.
Now, what's yours?
Marmite, 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 and theirs is Vegemite.
Is it as bad as Vegemite?
Well, we love it, so
Well, what is it? Is it yeast?
Yeah, one's a vegetable extract and one's a meat extract, but they both have the same kind of flavor. It's very dark, it's a distinctive flavor, and most people, it's one of those things. It's like when you go to the UK and you have black pudding, like most people just can't stomach the look of it. And if you see Vegemite or Marmite and you're going to put it on your toast, it's not something that, most people that don't know what it is or have that acquired taste for it are going to use it.
Are there any other mites out there, or is it just this and Australia and New Zealand? Because I don't know of any other mites. I don't think we have any mites out here.
No, I've not come across it myself either.
Maybe I should come up with something like.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, because
you've got dynamite.
We got dynamite, and then, but we have Miracle Whip or mayonnaise or something. That's basically our might out here.
Yeah, that's your go-to.
So, what was the highest and the lowest out on tour with Tiger? What was the best moment? What was the most disappointing moment?
Well, I think there's no question when Tiger won the 2001 Masters, which was his 4th consecutive major. So he held all 4 major championships at one time. Nobody's ever done that. Obviously, that was a monumental moment, and probably something I'll never forget. And there was many highlights. And then to be honest, I've had that question asked a lot. What were the low moments? But I guess he had lengthy periods of time when he wasn't playing, but as far as on the course, I can honestly say there wasn't a lot of low moments. I mean, he was a great competitor. You always knew every day that he gave it his best. So if it didn't work out, you couldn't really say it was a low because he was such a incredible competitor, and he never left anything on the table. The score that he shot was the best score he could have shot today. So, pretty amazing to be able to say that about an individual.
Was his dad around when you were around? I'm trying to think when his dad passed.
Yeah. His dad was around for a good portion of the time. He passed around 2006, I believe it was. I started in '99, so he was there. Very influential figure, had a great impact on Tiger's game, and often when Tiger might have been struggling with something, he could call upon his dad because his dad had a great set of eyes. And towards the later part of his career, his dad wasn't well enough to travel to all the tournaments, but he certainly watched it on TV, and he'd have the ability sometimes just through watching it on TV to be able to give Tiger some little tips that would help. So certainly, in the short term, Tiger really missed having that connection with his father, like any son does, but also that added connection that his father had a great knowledge of his game.
So his dad could be watching the tournament on TV, see something in his swing, and literally call him on the course?
Well, no, not on the course, but he could certainly, you can't, don't have your phones turned on when you're on the course, but he'd certainly, if he spotted something, he'd talk to Tiger that evening or after the round, and that would be very beneficial most of the time.
I remember there was some controversy some years ago about a player that had difficulty with walking, and so they talked about being in a golf cart, and then that was against the rules. And I can't remember what came down with that, but I don't know. I was sort of like, let him use the golf cart. Like, I don't know how big an advantage that is because he's got a bad leg. But where do you come down on something like that?
Yeah, the guy's name, he was a guy called, his name was Casey Martin. He's from Oregon, and he was a very good player, but he couldn't walk 18 holes, and through a physical disability he had with his leg, and in order to play, he required a cart, of which he was granted some dispensation for a little while, but I guess they'd probably, I'm not sure. Yeah, look, if you're, it's a sport where you've got to be able to walk the golf course. That's basically what it is, and it is. I guess you can look at it as being a bit of an unfair advantage. If the weather gets really poor and you've got a golf cart and you can shelter from the weather, you're out there in the wind and the rain, and you've got a golf cart and you can drive between shots without getting wet and everything. There's some advantage in that. Look, I mean, it's an interesting debate. They use carts on the senior tour, so it's an interesting debate whether you should be able to or not.
Yeah, I know. When you bring up nuances like being able to shelter from a rainstorm or things like that, I kind of go, yeah, kind of makes sense. I mean, I guess in a way, it'd be like if you're a professional football kicker, but you couldn't walk out to the middle of the field and kick the football. They wouldn't let you put someone in a cart and put them out and then let them kick the football. They would say, you got to walk out there. You can't be carried out there or what have you. I guess in a certain way it makes sense. You're saying part of the sport is you have to be able to walk 18 holes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess also if you allow one person to use a cart, I guess there might have been some thought that perhaps a lot of other people with different dispensations, are going to ask to use a cart because I've got a heart rate, I've got a heart problem, maybe I've got this. I'm not sure. Is it? Look, you got to be able to walk, and I guess that's the bottom line. So,
what are some of the quirkier rules? Like, you can't have a phone out there. Is that a rule?
Well, no, you can have a phone, but you can't. You obviously can't have your phone on while you're playing, and that. Right. But look, the golf is a comprehensive set of rules in golf. I mean, there's a lot of rules, and that's why golf always has rules officials, and you always see players if there's any kind of possibility where there could be a penalty involved or a drop involved, they get a rules official because the rules are quite difficult in the golf, and it's very hard to keep updated with all the rules and that. So tournaments have rules officials, which become big parts of the tournaments, obviously.
So for you, are we retired? Are you going to be out on the links? Are you still caddying? I mean, once you make it in the Hall of Fame, where do you go from there?
Yeah, no, I've done my time caddying. I mean, I caddy, maybe one or two tournaments here and there. I like to caddy in our local National Open, the New Zealand Open, and maybe caddy in the Australian Open or something like that. But no, I did 40 plus years of caddying, and I'm happily retired back in New Zealand now, and it's still good to enjoy a bit of car racing and just do your own thing.
Can you make good money being a caddy, or is there like a base pay, or is it all just up to what the golfer wants to pay?
Yeah, look, I mean, everybody has a different deal. Caddies, the main income from a caddy is a percentage of the winnings. So it's become a very, very lucrative job, caddying. And, years ago when I first started caddying, there weren't enough caddies. You could often, on the first two rounds of a tournament, you could caddy for two different players if they were on the opposite side of the draw. If one guy was playing Thursday morning, one was playing Thursday afternoon, and they flip-flopped it, one was Friday morning, Friday afternoon, you could caddy for two players because some guys didn't have caddies. But it's become a very, very lucrative job. If you think about, a tournament that pays $4 million to win and the caddy gets 10%, that's 1 week's work. It's an enormous amount of money. You look at the Live Tour, the prize money on the Live Tour, and if you're caddying on the PJ Tour or the Live Tour and you're caddying for one of the very good players, it's a very, very lucrative job, and it's a very sought after job now. So it becomes a very competitive field.
So is that the standard 10%?
On a win, so it can vary. Generally, it could be from 6. Every player will play 10% on a win, but it'll be. And there are a couple of players that I've known that have played more than 10% for a win. But generally, it'll be. There'll be a deal where it's a percentage for a top 10, a percentage for a win, and then below a top 10. So it could be 6%, 8%, 10%. It could be 7, 9, 10, something like that. But it'll be in the range of 6 to 10%, but generally always 10% for a win. And like I said, if you look at all the big tournaments, what they pay, it's become a very lucrative job.
Yeah, I never really thought about that, but it's standard 10% on a win. So if that guy's made $5 million, the guy who's caddying for him is going to make $500K.
Yeah, and look, not just a caddy is not a. It's a skilled position, but I mean, it's not like you got to go to university. You're not got to put a lot of training in it. It's a job that, you've got to have a lot of ability and a lot of self-confidence and know what you're doing. But I mean, it's a very lucrative living to be made for a job that doesn't require any training, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a weird and lesser fashion, I was a carpenter, but I never read a book on it, and I never went to college or school. I never took a class. It was just on-the-site training, just on the site. It's on the job site, and then at some point you become a carpenter. And I guess you did on-the-job training for all those years, and that's what you got paid for. Together We Roared is the name of the book, alongside Tiger for his epic 12-year, 13 majors run. It's available now. And Steve may be coming to a dirt track near you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, right.
Good talking to you, Steve Williams.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show, Adam. Good luck to you.
Same to you. My pleasure. All right. I'm going to be in Port Charles, Florida at Fasani's Italian Steakhouse and Theater. Going to be doing stand-up there May 2nd, May 3rd. 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. I think it's Friday and Saturday, and I got to look into that. Anyway, May 2nd, May 3rd, 4 shows. And then Melbourne, Florida, doing stand-up there at the Melbourne Auditorium. That'll be May 4th. Go down to Carolla.com for all the live shows. So until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Colonel Brian Sawser and Maury Povich and Steve Williams saying mahalo.